Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is on e-commerce, enterprise e-commerce. The presenter is Michael Berg, CEO here at Spindustry. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the question feature and we will try to get these answered at the end. We'll end right at 12:30 for you guys, but if you want to stay around, we can answer more questions. After we finish, we'll make sure to send you the recording of the webinar. And without further ado, I'll let Michael get started.
Great, thanks, Brittany. Well, 11:30, I don't know if it's quite good morning or good afternoon, but I'd just like to welcome you guys all to the webinar. So let's talk about enterprise e-commerce. Our agenda today, we're first going to define e-commerce. We're going to provide an overview of the current e-commerce landscape. We're going to talk about the opportunity and different approaches to e-commerce. We're going to talk about some differences and opportunities between B2B and B2C e-commerce, being business to business and business to consumer. We're going to share things to consider before jumping into that e-commerce process. And lastly, we'll outline some specific actions you can take in the next 30 days to just get started.
Let's get started with the basics. Can you define e-commerce?
Sure, because there are a lot of ways to define e-commerce. Let's get on the same page for today. E-commerce is simply selling things or selling products or services online. So we've all probably bought products on Amazon, and hopefully in a business setting, you've bought some things online as well. That's basic e-commerce. There's e-business, which we would define as surrounding activities that support e-commerce. So maybe on your site, people can download brochures, schematics, they can fill out a warranty card, something like that. We consider those e-business processes as opposed to proper e-commerce. Now, enterprise e-commerce, which is what we're talking about today, is taking that up a notch and saying, do you have a complex products, with configurations? Do you support 50,000 plus SKUs? Do you have a complex buying process for your customers where there's a long timeline? They're shopping maybe via a request for quote versus a cart. You have multiple pricing tiers. And does your shopping or e-commerce experience tie to back-end systems or point of sale systems? Do you have data in multiple places that all needs to come together for this e-commerce process to work? Any combination of those together starts pushing your organization towards enterprise level e-commerce. A couple more statistics for you. People always want to know what the investment is in an e-commerce project. So some statistics we should want to share with you. Large organizations are going to spend potentially millions or tens of millions of dollars on e-commerce. But a mid-market retailer or organizations like many of you on the webinar today, if you're in the 500,000 to $1 million zone on investing in enterprise e-commerce over the first year or two, that's very reasonable and that's a range we've seen in the real world. A survey conducted by Internet Retailer pointed out that 17% of organizations say they're replatforming right now, and another 72% say they're going to switch their e-commerce platform in the next year, or next 2 years. So a lot of organizations are making this investment and they're switching platforms to something that's going to suit their needs and support them in where they're trying to go. So people are getting real about enterprise e-commerce.
Awesome. So now that we understand what e-commerce is, let's talk numbers.
And we have a lot of numbers for you. So we do have some statistics I want to read through today, but in addition to just reading through them, we have some stories certainly from our experience we can share. So again, 1.9 billion global digital buyers, 25% of the world's population. So it's hard to get 25% of the world's population into any statistic. So that's pretty impressive. 13.7% of retail sales worldwide is done via e-commerce, and it's growing fast to 18% by 2021. However, half of American small businesses do not have a website, which is an interesting statistic and one that may be hard to believe, but just shows you there's a lot of opportunity still for e-commerce to continue growing. People shop online because they can shop at all hours of the day, and that's a miss often in organizations that we work with, that they don't think about the fact that their buyers will be buying in the evening, on the weekends, and off hours when they can research new vendors. You have to be serving your customers 24 hours a day. 65% of shoppers price compare on mobile phones in physical locations. You've probably done that. We've seen lots of people do that in the consumer space, but you can imagine that is also happening, and statistically we can show that's happening in the B2B space as well. And 2.8% of e-commerce visits convert into a purchase. That's a question we always get. What's normal if I have 100 visitors coming to my website, what % of them is going to convert into a sale? And that's a number you can use to make some estimations. 69% of shopping carts are abandoned, and surprise extra cost is the #1 reason that shoppers have that abandoned cart. So think about that. The number of people that are coming to your site and getting to the step of starting a cart but abandoning it could be greatly increased if you take some steps in building out your e-commerce platform. So you have a lot more sales. And one of those steps, abandoned cart follow-up emails, have an open rate of 45%, which is a fairly high open rate. So just doing a little bit of follow-up can turn that abandoned cart situation around. 52% of online stores have omni-channel capabilities. And what omni-channel means is that your online store ties with your point of sale system and other interaction points with your customers, so that if somebody buys something, returns something, etc., that complete picture of what they've done, what activities they've done with your organization is available in any place. So not only do these organizations have an online store, but they've got all their systems connected. That's pretty impressive. Mobile e-commerce accounts for 67% of digital sales in 2019. So not only are people buying from their computers, they're buying off their phones from you. And I know we all know that inherently, but I'm going to guess many of your websites and e-commerce solutions are not mobile friendly. We see it a lot. Younger people spend more time shopping online, but seniors, not even the people between younger people and seniors, but seniors are shopping 2.5 hours per week. That's not just on the web, they're shopping 2.5 hours a week. So you can only imagine somebody in the middle of their career who is online all the time is shopping even more than that personally and for their business. So people are spending a lot of time shopping online. Some more B2B statistics for you. 41% of B2B companies expect B2B sales to grow more than 25%. Payment options are a vital part of B2B e-commerce, including POs and mobile wallets. So again, this isn't just having basic shopping cart capabilities, it's giving them multiple ways to pay. So again, if they buy that way from you on the phone or offline today, they need to be able to do it online. B2B e-commerce will hit 1.8 trillion by 2023, and 17% of all B2B sales in the US will be via e-commerce by 2023. We hope we're painting a picture that a lot of activity is going to be taking place online. We all know that inherently again, but as it kind of falls to the wayside as something you want to tackle this year, maybe these statistics will convince you this should be sooner than later for your organization.
So it sounds like there are a lot of great opportunities. Are there different ways that companies can approach it?
Of course, yeah, there sure are. So let's talk about some of those. How do you sell today? So in your organization, there's a few different scenarios we see when we talk to organizations just like yours. Some organizations are still completely offline, whether it's paper catalogs, phone calls, etc. They're completely offline, and you have to do that first. You have to have those processes in place that you can then take into the online world. So that's one situation you could find yourself in. Online through retail and partners means you've kind of punted to other people, whether you're selling through Amazon, through a dealer channel, through eBay, other sources, other platforms like that. You're allowing other people to essentially do the work and giving them a piece of the business to do that, which is fine, and maybe a first test for some of you, but it's not you doing it yourself. Online, kind of, and it's not really a technical term, but it's something we see a lot of people doing. So as an illustration of that, we see a lot of people taking this kind of approach. So they have an online form where people can request parts. It's better than an email link that lets people just contact you and type in whatever they want to type. A form at least would have required fields and validations and could do some steps like that to make the message they're sending you more clear. But it isn't shopping. It isn't tying to any systems. It isn't letting them complete their order online and knowing that their part is on their way to them before they get offline. But it's maybe a way to see and dip your toe in the water and see if your potential clients, customers, would interact with you online before you go to full e-commerce. The next step would be online brand store, having your own e-commerce store, perhaps with limited functionality, but this is what most of you would think as an online experience. This would mean you've got a shopping cart, people can open accounts, there's going to be emails confirming an order going back and forth. The hidden kind of wrinkles here could be that you're data entering the orders yourself into your back-end system. There's no integration there, things like that. But it works as far as the consumer is concerned. And then obviously the final step is an online enterprise e-commerce or brand store that's your own store in which it is integrated start to finish. Your shopping cart is integrated with backend systems. You have a complete experience online. It ties to point of sale systems. Whether a customer calls in or goes online, they're able to interact with their full account and your organization. That's the goal. That's where you want to be. In getting to that solution and having your online store ready to go, there's also some other benefits that you can find. There's other shopping experiences you can provide on your site that, an Amazon or an eBay or one of those other partners you might work with isn't going to provide to you. You could have exclusive products on your brand store. So maybe you sell your current line of widgets through a partner online, but discontinued widgets, special widgets, hard to find widgets, you could sell those on your store so people can still get them. You could sell personalized products. So again, they could be customized in some way with a logo. They could be private labeled completely. You could offer a subscription to consumable products that might be involved in the process that you're selling, or even parts themselves, but you could offer that subscription service so that people don't have to remember to reorder. You could have a points program. Everybody likes a deal, even in B2B shopping. So the idea that you could give people points that they accumulate from various orders so that, again, you could send reminders encouraging them to spend the points and come back to your store, buy something else. It gets them back to your store. And again, all these experiences, you know more about your consumer because they're buying from you. You have their name, et cetera, where if you're working with a partner, you may not have all that information.
As people, we are all consumers. Can you tell us the difference between B2B and B2C?
Sure. And again, like you said, Brittany, people are people. They're shopping in their personal lives, and then when they go to their office and do maybe some B2B shopping, they still expect the same niceties. They just also expect some additional services. But while there's similarities, there are indeed some differences. So a B2B buyer is going to have a longer decision-making process. Sometimes it takes months or years for relationships to develop. So you just have to think about that in developing your website and your e-commerce solution. What steps are you putting in place so people can sign up for more information, so they can open accounts without completing the process, within the same day? Can they come back and complete a cart they started a month ago? Because that may be a realistic time frame for a B2B purchase, where oftentimes organizations clear carts out on a retail site within a day or two. There could be multiple stakeholders involved in an online purchase. So you might have to develop something you could call an online hub, where somebody putting things in the cart is different than somebody from your client's organization that has to approve the order. So you may have to let multiple people log into one account and complete a process that way. There could be different ways to shop. People could shop by a request for quote. They could shop by schematics. There could be different pricing tiers they get to by creating an account. There could be a lot of complex shipping options. One of those I want to highlight for a second is shopping by schematics. This is a very popular topic when we talk with organizations. So as you can see, from a visual standpoint, it's very appealing if you're looking at a complex product build of any sort and you want to be able to locate where the part is that you need to order. Maybe it has a relation to another part that you need. So if you order part number 3, you need part number 4 to go with it. So a system like this could tell people that's the case, and visually you could see it in the schematic as well. So we do a lot of shop by schematics when we work with our clients here. Back to B2B differences, you could have a smaller lead pool you're working with, but again, the purchases are going to be larger, so you still want to pursue those things, but be ready that the numbers in pursuing B2B buyers are going to be smaller than B2C. B2B buyers are going to come with a different type of product knowledge. They may come more informed and demand more information from you than a retail buyer. And your e-commerce system should also help you with the old 80-20 rule, right? You want to have personal interactions with your clients. That's what some people say. I don't want to go to e-commerce because I want to talk to my big buyers. I want to work with them one-on-one. And that's true. But let's automate the menial kind of repetitive tasks that are part of that B2B buying process, leaving you time to deal with those special situations where you're trying to get a client to move up to the next level, or you're trying to deal with a problem that may have arisen. But let's let some basic tasks get automated here, such as product renewals, product extensions. Let's try through an e-commerce system, letting your B2B buyer get notified their subscription's about to end and see if they just renew. Maybe you don't have to even involve a salesperson, and you could even look for upgrades through that same process. It's just leave the personal time for the ones that need it and automate those tasks that you can. You want to have other elements on your shopping experience, such as providing service records, contracts, correspondence history, any value adds that gets your possible customers to come back and find information on your website or e-commerce solution that could cause them to then, while they're there, buy something extra is great to have. Now, in marketing, we always talk about collecting information, but we've read a lot about this and learned a lot about this, and we've talked with our clients. You do want to balance that. The B2B buyer in particular, if they're going to buy $1 million product or $100,000 product from you, let them have access to demos and information that'll help them, make that decision. And these people are, pretty serious about their privacy as well sometimes. You want to collect information if you're going to offer them, a white paper or other pieces of data that help them make that decision, but balance it with putting up roadblocks that don't let them explore. So just consider both those options and find a balance to let them look around and gather information when you need to, but don't put up needless roadblocks.
Sounds like there are a lot of reasons to move forward with e-commerce, but we've all heard development horror stories. What are some things a manufacturer should consider before jumping in?
Great question. So since we're going to talk about some hard stuff, one more piece of encouragement before we dive in, right? 80% of B2B customers spend more with sellers that provide strong e-commerce services. So keep that in mind as we go through the next few slides. And I will point out, we're going to go through 5 steps here of getting ready for e-commerce. We have an additional series of webinars where we're going to dive into each of these more deeply. So I want to touch on these, and if you find any one of these next 5 steps particularly interesting, we can get in contact with you and let you know about those upcoming webinars where we're really going to deep dive into each of these sections. But let's cover some of those today. So like with many business projects that you might dive into at your organization, goals is always the first step. You want to set SMART goals for an e-commerce project and understand what success looks like. You have to understand, you got to look at what you hope it's going to produce for you a year from today and put in the investment that's going to take to make that happen. You have to talk about the roadblocks. It doesn't do any good to get to the 11th hour and then decide we can't move forward. So let's talk about why you haven't achieved those goals, why you haven't gone after those dreams. Let's talk about what are those roadblocks. Are they technical? Is it that you haven't found the right partner? Is it internal politics? And it's often that, whether that's internal politics at your office or how you work today with your dealer channel. And those are real concerns. We're not making light of those. There's lots of things to talk about, and you want to keep all of the stakeholders involved happy. But let's put those all out on the table and understand how those roadblocks are going to get in the way of the goals, deal with it, set goals that work with whatever roadblocks can't be moved, and then move forward. So we want to make sure that is the first step of your process. Probably the largest step in the process is the data that supports an e-commerce solution. So certainly building an e-commerce site is a lot of work, making the cart function, making the checkout process work, making it so the site looks nice. Those are all important and hard to do. But the data that supports the e-commerce solution is really what gets underestimated a lot as part of the project. So what are some challenges in the areas of data? One, data silos. You've got data in 16 different systems. Some of those probably aren't even online. Some of those are in Excel spreadsheets. And some of them are in very complex back-end systems that you've had for 40 years at your organization. You've got to get all these data silos talking to each other through system integration, which is the next topic. Once you've located all that data, you got to get them talking to each other. And these can be technical barriers. Again, there can be political barriers. There could be challenges with systems that haven't been upgraded in a long time. And if they were, then you could integrate them. And there could be, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. There could be some steps where you realize the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and you may just have to have some manual steps in the process. If you can get 80% of the systems talking to each other, that's better than 0. And if waiting for 100% means you can't do this for 2 years, it still might be worth moving ahead. That's okay. So once you've got the data all in virtually in one place, and you have to figure out how to get it in the same format, and then you have to figure out what that data looks like. We've all gone to e-commerce sites clicked on the top bar and seen a menu of categories and subcategories that make sense, and we've seen ones that don't. And even the ones that make sense and look good, it doesn't look maybe like the amount of work that went into it is visible on the screen. But in talking through how your data works, talking through the data that surrounds products that you have available to each other, you have to figure out what categories, subcategories look like and make sure they agree with each other and make sense. You don't want to have categories such as large and then on sale, or you want the categories to agree with each other. If they're product types or they're colors or shapes, etc., you want them to all be within the same lineage with each other. And doing that takes a lot more work than it sounds like it would, but it's something that has to be done first. Along with product taxonomy and organizing your products into categories, you have to think about search. We've been Google trained and Amazon trained, even in the B2B space, to search for products, skipping menus and category structures in many cases. But getting search to work again on the front end takes a lot of work on the back end. There are misspellings, there's pluralizations, there's all kinds of problems like that to deal with. We were just on a call the other day with a client who has a site that sells tires online, and the word tire does not result in any products coming back because they've used technical terms throughout the website to describe products. So the layperson term does not bring back, results. SKU numbers, part numbers, all those things should also bring back results, but you have to think all of that through to make sure that somebody searching will find what they want. One thing we do often on websites, all the time on e-commerce website, is track what happens in that search as well. And if you're not doing that on your site, that'd be something I'd go home and check on today and make sure it's happening at your organization, because you can learn a lot about the voice of your customer and learn a lot about what people are searching for and what products are coming back, and more importantly, what products are not coming back from a search, and then fix data on your website so that people find what they're looking for. Search is very important. And search is more than just a keyword search. Search involves developing attributes about your product, and that's data you have to get organized so that when people want to filter, like you see here on the left side, by various attributes, be it brand, price, color, all kinds of different attributes, size, you have to have the data that supports it. So for example, if you had a product that was 7 feet long, if the number 7 is in the product description and you search in a keyword search for 7, you're going to find it. If you filter on things between 6 and 8 feet, you're not going to find that product unless 7 is in a separate data field and is an attribute of that product. If 7 is just part of the description, it's not going to find it in a filter of 6 to 8 feet. So yes, if you have 50,000 SKUs, creating all of those attributes, defining those attributes, and adjusting the data to support that is a lot of work. But if you do that, then your customers can find the right product for them and achieve a successful search on your site and ultimately buy things from you. Pricing, tax, shipping are all huge topics in and of themselves. There's lots of ways you can calculate those elements on your site. There's lots of third-party systems that you can tie to help you with those calculations. The most interesting part here is that oftentimes, if you're used to selling offline, you're making some decisions around pricing, tax, and shipping in your head or manually, or you have flexibility on each order that comes in. If you're going to teach a website or an e-commerce system how to make those decisions for you, you're going to be defining some rules and making some decisions where you've left it kind of loosey-goosey in the past. So this is good because from a transition standpoint, if whoever's running your e-commerce suddenly is no longer with your organization and all that knowledge in their head goes away, that's terrible. The more of those processes we can bring into the website and let the website and e-commerce platform make those decisions for you, you'll have more consistent interactions with your consumers, and your staff doesn't have to make all those decisions day to day. The system will do it for them. And scalability, again, from a data and server perspective, what if all this works really well, right? You have to plan for what if you're selling 10, 100 orders today and you're suddenly selling 1,000 or 10,000. So you have to prepare for that growth in your business. We talk a lot about scalability with our clients. So how do you actually get this built, and who do you build it with, and what approach do you take to build it? That's the next topic of partner and platform. So are you the type of firm that wants to build a custom solution that works just right for you? Or are you the type of firm that fits well into a platform that's pre-existing? That's a decision you have to make. Do you have the internal team to build and support an e-commerce platform, or do you need to find an external agency or web development firm that can help you in this area? Are you an organization that's more comfortable with an upfront investment or some ongoing investment into this type of solution? There's different pricing models that can be used in how you purchase an e-commerce platform. So all of these are elements to think about when deciding how you want to move forward. And once you launch an e-commerce platform, no matter how you build it, the job is not done. In fact, arguably, it's just starting. After a site launches, there's going to be maintenance to that site. There's going to be, you will have made decisions about how you're going to host that site. And again, from a scalability perspective, that hosting situation may change over time as your site gets busier. There's going to be enhancements. No matter what amount of planning you've done beforehand, once you put a site out there in the real world and thousands of people are using it, tens of thousands of people are using it, you're going to get feedback. And you're going to want to ignore some of those comments, and you're going to want to take the comments that are coming from multiple sources seriously and make some enhancements to your site to please your audience. Speaking of that audience, you have to get people to your e-commerce site. So there's going to be digital marketing, which involves email marketing, social, paid advertising that gets people to your website, search engine optimization, or organic as well as paid. So you have to have internal or external sources helping you get those things done. You want to integrate that with all of your other messaging. You might still be doing print catalogs. You might be doing radio, TV, other kinds of advertising. You've got to get all that integrated so that they're talking to each other. And there's content updates to the site, be it white papers, other information like that, video, or just updating and adding and deleting parts and attributes and changing pricing. There's lots of content updates that are going to happen to a site on some regular basis, whether it's daily, monthly, quarterly, depending on the speed your business moves at. Somebody has to be ready to support all that, again, either internally or externally. So just make sure you've allocated the right resources to support a site once it launches. And besides getting that site out the door and those things we just described, you should certainly have a long-term strategy to your e-commerce plan. The world has changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years. The risk-reward model for business in general has changed. If you're growing your organization and you're trying to figure out if you can go from a regional business to a nationwide business to a global business, the way you had to explore and test that idea 30, 50 years ago was much more difficult. You were talking about building physical facilities on a guess, essentially, about on the coast and expanding your business. Your mother, father, grandfather, grandmother were risking their house to bet the business on this happening. You can test ideas so much more inexpensively today. You can announce potential products online, find out if anybody's interested. Putting up an e-commerce site still relative to doing physical buildings and expanding nationwide in other ways is still relatively inexpensive. So dream big and think about that long-term strategy. You can use your website, your e-commerce platform, and your digital marketing to try and test new products, to try and test going into new markets. If you're a product-based business today, you can use all these channels to figure out, could we be a service-oriented business? Could we do a combination of those things? Or could we switch completely to being a service-oriented business? If you are a B2B business today and you're working through a dealer channel, maybe that is going to work wonderful, but maybe you want to work directly with your consumers, at least partially. What does that look like? What does that do to your business? It's not just about putting up the e-commerce platform, it's changing the philosophy of your organization. But this technology can facilitate that in a way you couldn't have done, again, 20 years ago. So what would it look like for you to go from a B2B organization to a B2C organization, again, at least partially? And what other dreams do you have? You had good ideas in 1995 and 2005. Get those ideas out and talk about them and see if the way the risk-reward model has changed and the technology has changed in the past 10 years, the scalability has changed. Can you re-explore those ideas and really change your business in the next year, the next 3 years, in ways that you couldn't have imagined 10 or 15 years ago. That's the exciting stuff. I mean, talking through the process and what you have to do to get ready for e-commerce are all important steps and ones we can explore further. But I want you to get excited about changing your business. You've probably, kind of squeezed the turnip on a lot of traditional marketing methods and thought about, I don't know if that's going to work or that didn't work before. You may not have really explored what getting serious about e-commerce could do for your business. And man, again, the risk reward model has just changed so much. It's time to take a look at it.
So there's a lot to get excited about here. What is one thing someone could do in the next 30 days to really make a difference?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time. We wrote a book a few years ago on all these same topics, digital marketing for manufacturers. And we know we talk about some big topics in that book. We know we've talked about some big topics today in this webinar. And everyone always wants to know, what can I go back to my office today and do quickly? So this is just one idea. There's other ideas, and we would certainly entertain helping any of you come up with other ideas you could explore based on your individual situations. But one thing, if you haven't done this, we would encourage you to do. Go on your own site, make a list of ideas and transactions and other kinds of interactions you would hope that your potential customer could do with your organization. Go on your website, whether it's just kind of a regular website or a true e-commerce site already, and try to perform those actions. See what happens. Is it a pleasing experience? Can you get the information you want? Do people respond to you when you contact the people manning the website or e-commerce site? See what that experience is like. Make a list of things that you wish the e-commerce site was doing that it's not, and write that and keep that. Look at your two competitors and try to go do those same things on their sites. See if you can do those. And they may be doing something you didn't think about. Write those ideas down. You list all those differences, list all those ideas out. This can start to be your e-commerce wish list. And then what you really have to kind of look in the mirror about, right, is back to those roadblocks we talked about when we talked about setting goals. Why haven't you done those things? You went on your own website, you thought, man, this doesn't work the way I'd like it to work. I can't shop, I can't order parts, I can't do these things that I wish my customers could do. And again, maybe you go on your competitor's site and they seem to be able to do those things. Why haven't we done those as an organization? We're smart people. Look and see what those roadblocks really are. Is it a technical barrier? Again, is it internal politics? Is it perceived to be expensive? And again, when you look at any of these investments, it might be quote unquote expensive, but what's the return? That's the really important part to think about. Or best of all, are those roadblocks really non-existent? Is it just in your head? Is it just you haven't thought about it? Is it just you haven't returned to look at your own website or in your e-commerce store lately and thought, what could we be doing differently? Lots of times, it just isn't top of mind and you're just kind of getting through your day-to-day business and haven't thought about backing up to that 30,000 foot level and re-examining your business from an e-commerce perspective. And you realize there's not that many roadblocks in the way of doing some of these things that we've talked about, and there's huge opportunity to take advantage of. So in reviewing what we've covered today, hopefully we've shown you, and the statistics back it up, that e-commerce is a great opportunity for your organization. Enterprise e-commerce is just as big an opportunity, but there are complexities to think about when going down that road. As an organization, again, like we've talked about from the beginning, selling 50,000 plus parts, selling complex transactions to people, there's just a lot to think about when putting that interaction online. Again, but the opportunity is there. There's great opportunities to sell in a unique way to your customers. We talked about shopping by schematics. We talked about letting people shop via request for quote. We talked about multiple people logging into an e-commerce site in a complex transaction cycle. You can offer all of those opportunities to your customers. Prepare by setting those SMART goals we talked about and getting the data ready, which is a big step, but also a key in getting things done right. We talked about choosing the right platform and partner to help you get this done and being prepared to support your e-commerce platform after it launches. And I want you to get excited about the low risk to reward model in this world today and get excited about dreaming big about your organization. again, like the industrial revolution kind of before it, the risk reward model has just really changed in the past 20 years, the past 10 years, especially with social and mobile. There's a lot, and people's acceptance of shopping online in the B2B space. So dream big, get excited, and let's re-examine those good ideas you had a few years ago and see if they can't be done today. So we can take some questions, and then we'll give you some contact information, talk about what next steps are on some other webinars we're putting out into the world, but we'll take some questions if you have them.
All right, yep, I do have a few questions here for you. First one is, who is the best person in our company to lead a new e-commerce project?
Oh, great question. And it's going to be different depending on the size of your organization, but I'll give you a couple of key points that where we've seen this go right and go wrong in organizations we've worked with. For a lot of organizations, this is a top level decision, especially if you're changing the model, right? If you're changing the model from B2B to B2C, this is a leadership decision at the CE level. This is the president of the organization being involved in driving this forward. That's often the case for medium-sized to smaller organizations, family-owned businesses that we might work with. A director of marketing or a CMO is probably the next correct answer. For a long time, websites and e-commerce projects were thought to be technology projects, and they really are marketing projects. The how to get it done is a technology project, but this really needs to be driven by the business development and marketing teams in how this moves forward. Certainly, in some organizations, an IT leader could be running this project as well. Some organizations, larger ones, are going to have an actual e-commerce manager or somebody in charge of e-business. That would be the right person if an organization has that person in the role. So those are the best places to start. Obviously, every one of your organizations is going to be different. We've talked to CFOs and controllers and directors of operations. There's a lot of answers there, but that's probably the right place to start. And if the people that I mentioned are not in the room when you're making these decisions or choices to pursue this, you probably need to add some of those folks to the team.
This person also asked about, what about after the site launches?
Sure, we covered that a little bit, but yeah, that can't be underestimated. You should be planning for after launch, before the launch, of course, but after launch, you need to be ready with the right resources to market the site, support the changes that are inevitably going to come, dealing with success that shows up in that scalability we talked about. And again, whether this is an external or internal team or a combination doing it, you have to have that plan in place, and you have to have measurement in place on the website to help you make decisions. That's what's so great about digital and e-commerce in general. If we put the right measurement tools in place, Google Analytics, e-commerce tracking, a lot of other tools that we can put into e-commerce platforms, you're not guessing after the fact, right? You'll know what's working, you know what's not working, and then your team can react to it. But again, you have to have resources available to react to it properly.
All right, next question. This person asks, do you have any suggestions for promoting the new store before it launches? Do you have any do's or don'ts?
Sure. Just as part of that overall kind of marketing plan and store launch plan and supporting the site afterwards in regards to marketing. Yeah, and again, it depends on your user set. If this is a public-facing store with millions of potential users, again, if you already have an email list that you can communicate with them on, you can do that. You could announce the store is coming soon. You could certainly, we've created videos for clients in which they explain some of the top new features of the site. A website shouldn't require a lot of explanation, or the UX maybe needs another look. But if you're changing your business processes and it's something new, people don't love change sometimes. So if it's something new in how you're doing business and it's going to defy their expectations, that's worth explaining, especially if you have, again, as we talked about earlier, B2B partners, people that interact with you in a deep way, a multi-step way, and you're changing that process, and you can communicate with that closed set of partners and stakeholders. You could do a webinar like this and really explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then talk through the new website before it launches. But at a minimum, an email blast to your customers that you already have, telling them some changes coming, and letting them know where they need to go for questions if they do have any confusion points they reach, are great steps.
All right, a couple more questions here. Next one is, We tried working with a web developer that sounded great, but it's really struggled to get information to and from our ERP. In the future,
Sure.
How can we make sure the developer knows what they're doing?
Right. So a lot of the topics we covered today hopefully start to give you a checklist of things that these should all be the conversation points that you're having with your internal team or external partners that you're looking at in taking on the e-commerce challenge. You really have to have people that understand, like I said, how to think like a business owner and set the right goals. Also has the depth to handle all of the technical issues and really understands the data, how to connect disparate systems, how to connect to legacy systems, how to connect different formats of data together, again, how to develop different ideas around product taxonomy, organizing your products. These are all big challenges, but a team that's done it a lot can tackle it for you. And you just, again, the topics we talked about today, I would bring all of those up in any proposal or RFP or any kind of mechanism you were using to talk to a potential web developer about this type of work. Oftentimes the focus is on the look of a site and the design elements, the UX, those kind of things, which are all super important. But you do have to understand if your web development firm has the technical chops to handle the back integrations.
All right, last question I have, unless any more come in. This person's asking about the example of ordering parts from a picture.
Oh, yeah.
They ask, how do you do that, and does it take a special type of drawing?
Sure. No, shopping by schematics is something you have to prepare for, but relatively inexpensive next to the reward. If you've got typical CAD CAM type blowout drawings of builds like what we showed, if you've got SVG as a type of file that works real well for that type of interaction, but those are all things you can work through with a technical provider. But yeah, if you have CAD CAM type drawings of all of your parts explosions like what we showed, they can be then taken through a process where you're hotspotting all those little numbers, and then you connect those hotspots to essentially a table of data that connects those numbers to individual parts, and then whatever e-commerce platform you're using can be built to tie those hotspots to those products. One thing that comes up is some organizations will say, man, we have 1,000 or 10,000 of those part drawings. That's going to take a little while, and that's true, and maybe it's worth that investment. One option would be to take your top 100, your top 10 part builds like that, schematic drawings, just take the top 100 or something and take those through the process and see if people interact with your e-commerce site that way and enjoy that experience on your top selling products. And then obviously then you'll know that it's worth doing the next 100, the next 500 if people are enjoying shopping that way. But it's not an overly complicated process versus the reward. We've seen a lot of people really like having that as part of their e-commerce solution.
All right, thank you. That wraps up our questions for today.
Great. Well, hopefully that gave you a lot to think about. Again, we do have a series of webinars where we're going to deep dive into some of the topics we talked about today. We would also welcome your input on that. So yeah, I know some of you don't have, we didn't ask some questions today, but if you think of any later, we'd love to entertain those, and those could certainly steer where we go and what webinars we put on. We want to provide information you're interested in. So my contact information is there. I'm Michael Bird. Again, I'm the CEO of Spindustry. There's my email address and my phone number on the website. We would love to hear from you. Any questions we can answer after the fact if you think of them. And thank you for your time today. We know it's valuable, but we want to help you understand the e-commerce situation out in the world and how you can take advantage of it and grow your business. Dream big, and let's talk more about e-commerce. Thank you.